My dad lied about needing surgery to steal my money, and I followed the money until he slipped up, posting a photo of himself grilling on a brand new boat that I unknowingly paid for. I sent my dad $7,200 for surgery he never needed. He told me he had a herniated disc, and if he didn't get the operation soon, he might lose feeling in his legs. He cried on the phone. I remember because it was the first time I had heard him cry since my grandfather's funeral. That alone should have told me something was off. My dad doesn't show emotion unless he's putting on a performance. But I didn't hesitate. I wired him the money the next morning. 3 weeks later, I saw a photo on Facebook. He was holding a beer in one hand, grilling steaks with my brother, standing in front of a brand new boat. The caption, "Weekend well spent. Nothing like lake life. No cast. No cane. No mention of surgery. Not even a limp." I must have stared at that photo for 10 minutes. It didn't make sense. I checked the date, the comments. People were congratulating him on the boat. My brother was tagged. They were smiling like they hadn't just squeezed thousands of dollars out of me under the guise of medical emergency. I felt my stomach twist. The kind of twist you feel when you know something's wrong but your brain hasn't caught up yet. I called him. He didn't answer. I texted him, "How are you feeling after the surgery?" No reply. I waited 2 more days, then called my mom. She didn't answer either. That's when I knew I wasn't just being ignored. I was being avoided. Let me back up. I'm 32. I live in Washington State working full-time as an HVAC technician. Nothing glamorous, but it pays well, and I've always been good with my hands. I rent a modest 2-bedroom place with my girlfriend, and we've been saving up to buy a house. Or at least we were until I gave my dad most of our down payment savings. My family is complicated. I was raised in rural Missouri in a house where silence was considered respect and obedience was the only language that mattered. My dad ran the place like a ship captain, booming voice firm, hand zero tolerance. My younger brother Jason was the golden child. He could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the soft one, the smart mouth, the kid who asked too many questions and got grounded for attitude. I moved out at 19 and didn't look back for years. It wasn't until my mom was hospitalized a few years ago that I began easing back into contact. Calls every few weeks, the occasional visit. They were never warm, but they were civil. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were rebuilding something. When my dad called about the surgery, he said he didn't want to ask Jason because he's got too much on his plate. That was the line that got me, because for once it sounded like he was choosing me, like I was the one he trusted. He said he needed it urgently, that insurance wouldn't cover the specialist, and he didn't want Mom to know how bad things were. He sounded vulnerable, human. I didn't even think. I just opened my bank app. That was 3 weeks ago. Now here I was, staring at a Facebook post of the man who supposedly couldn't walk without surgery dancing on the deck of a brand new boat. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I confronted Jason. I didn't want to go nuclear, not yet. I just texted, "Hey, saw the lake pics, thought Dad just had surgery." He replied within 5 minutes. "Surgery? What are you talking about?" I blinked. Typed again. He said he had a herniated disc and needed a spinal procedure. I sent him $7K. Jason didn't reply for an hour. Then, dude, he told me that money was a gift. He said you wanted to help pay for the boat, that it was your way of making amends. My blood went cold. Amends, I called Jason immediately. He picked up. He told me you felt guilty for not being around and that you offered to chip in. I thought it was weird, but you know Dad, he spins things. Yeah, that was one way to put it. I told him the truth. The surgery story, the crying on the phone, the "don't tell Mom." Jason was silent for a long time. Then he let out a low whistle. "Man, you got played." The next words out of his mouth made me want to throw my phone across the room. "I'm sorry, but you should have known better." That was it. No outrage, no sympathy, just a shrug. Like I dropped my wallet and someone picked it up and walked off, and it was my fault for not holding onto it tighter. That was when it all clicked. This wasn't just a one-time lie. This was how they saw me. A wallet with guilt issues. The prodigal son always trying to buy his way back in. I didn't say anything else to Jason. I hung up. Then I got angry, really deeply angry. Not just at my dad, at myself. For falling for it. For letting my guard down. For still chasing something that never existed, a real father-son connection. But this time, I wasn't going to lick my wounds and walk away like I always did. This time, I was going to find out where the money really went and make them wish they'd never picked me to scam. The next morning, I pulled my laptop onto the kitchen table and started digging. First stop, my bank account. I opened the transfer record and noted the exact date and routing number I sent the money to. I didn't expect it to tell me much, but it did. The account was a joint checking account under Robert R. Nolan, my dad, and someone named David Nolan. David, my cousin. I hadn't thought about David in years. He was my dad's nephew, always hanging around when we were kids, the one who sold fake concert tickets in high school and somehow convinced everyone he was going to be a millionaire by 25. I'd heard rumors that he ran some business now with my dad, flipping boats or trailers or something sketchy like that. Suddenly, the boat in the Facebook photo made more sense. It wasn't just a weekend purchase. It was probably part of their little operation. I needed more proof. So I did something I hadn't done since college. I played dumb. I texted my dad, "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're recovering okay. Any updates on the post-op stuff?" He didn't reply for almost a full day. Then, doing better. Long recovery. Appreciate your help, son. A lie straight to my face. I replied, glad to hear it. Also got a weird notification from my bank that flagged the transfer. Just said it looked like a business account. Any chance the account was under your name or something else? His answer was instant. All under me. Ignore it. Bank always messes stuff up. I screenshotted everything. Meanwhile, I went to work researching David. Turns out he wasn't hard to find. He had a public Instagram page full of shots of him holding beers, standing next to jet skis, and posing at what looked like boat auctions. One post caught my eye. Big shout out to Uncle Bob for helping me lock down the Sea Ray. We're gonna make a killing this summer, Uncle Bob. Sea Ray. That was the exact make of the boat in the photo. I cross-checked the post date. It was the day after my transfer cleared. That's when I knew my money was the boat. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was premeditated. They lied about a medical emergency, created a fake sense of urgency, and funneled my money directly into some backwoods side hustle. I told my girlfriend everything. She was furious at me for trusting them and at how far I was willing to bend for their approval. "You're not a son to them," she said. "You're a tool, a checkbook. That's it." And she was right. I was tired of being the fool. So I called an old friend Ben who worked in finance and occasionally helped small business owners trace fraudulent accounts. "I can't give you anything confidential," he warned, "but I can tell you what I'd do if I were you." And then he walked me through it. Turns out the joint account my money went to was attached to an LLC Lakeside Venture Leasing registered under my dad and David. I paid $15 to pull the business filing and nearly choked on my coffee when I saw it. Established in 2020. Used for buying and flipping watercraft. There was no emergency surgery. There was a business pitch, one I was never invited to, but I funded. Now I had a paper trail, the fake story, the financial records, the social media bragging. But I needed more, so I did something I'd been avoiding. I called my mom. At first she didn't answer. Then she finally texted, "Is this about the money? Don't do this, Daniel." I called again. This time she picked up. Her voice was tight. "You need to let this go. It was your gift. Your father said he lied." I cut in. There was no surgery. Silence. He cried on the phone. I said, my voice shaking. "Told me not to tell you. Said it was urgent. Said he needed me. And the whole time it was about a goddamn boat flipping business with David." She didn't deny it. She didn't even sound surprised. She just sighed and said, "You don't understand how hard things have been for your father." I laughed. "No, Mom, I don't. Because every time he screws up, someone else pays for it." "You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being done." I hung up. Then I called a lawyer. I didn't think I had much of a case. There was no contract, no formal agreement. But what I did have was evidence of fraudulent inducement. He got money from me under false pretenses. I had the texts, the bank records, the screenshots. And if nothing else, I wanted it on record. My lawyer was more optimistic than I expected. He used a false medical emergency to extract money, then spent it on a business and lied about it in writing. That's not just unethical, it's potentially criminal. That word hit me hard. Criminal. Could I really press charges against my own father? But then I remembered the Facebook photo, the stake in his hand, the smug smile. And I said, let's do it. Filing the police report was surreal. I sat in a clean beige room with my lawyer Janet across from a detective who had the calm, tired eyes of someone who'd seen every kind of betrayal before. Still, when I explained that my dad had faked a medical emergency to get money from me, he blinked twice. You said your father claimed it was for surgery. Yes. He told me he needed an urgent spinal operation or he might lose function in his legs. I wired him $7,200. 3 weeks later, he's drinking beer on a new boat with my cousin. I laid out the screenshots, the bank records, the text messages. I showed the business filing the LLC with his name and David's the Instagram post. When I was done, the detective leaned back and whistled through his teeth. That's not just a lie. That's intentional deception. I can refer this to the county prosecutor, but you should know this could lead to a fraud investigation. Janet nodded. That's what we're hoping for. Hope. That was a strange word in this context. I didn't feel hopeful. I felt exhausted, tired of chasing a version of my father that never existed. A week later, they called him in for questioning. He refused to speak. Then David lawyered up. I got a nasty voicemail from my mom that night. The kind that starts with, "How dare you?" and ends with, "After everything we've done for you, done for me." Try everything they'd done to me. The next few weeks were a blur of legal calls, notarized forms, and emotionally numb evenings. My girlfriend Megan held me together. She'd come home from her nursing shift, cook us both dinner, and remind me again and again that I was doing the right thing. Then the real twist dropped. Janet called me, her voice higher than usual. "We just got discovery on some bank statements tied to the LLC. You're gonna want to sit down. The account my money went into, it had been used to pay off David's credit card debt. Over $5,000 in outstanding balances cleared 3 days after I sent the transfer. There was also a payment to a marina, a deposit on a second-hand boat, and another charge that made my blood run cold. A car down payment. For Jason, my golden child brother. I hadn't even considered that angle. But there it was. My money didn't just fund a boat. It was used to help my brother get a new car. A black SUV. I remember now he posted about it a week after the surgery, said it was a gift from the family and finally something reliable to drive his daughter in. His daughter, my niece. I hadn't even met her yet. I called him. "Hey, just wanted to ask where'd the car come from?" He paused. "Why?" "Because part of the payment came from the same account Dad funneled my money into." Another pause. "That's not your business, man. It is when I paid for it." He scoffed. "You're seriously losing it." "No, Jason. I'm finally seeing things clearly." I hung up before I could say something I couldn't take back. The next week, the county issued a notice they were pursuing an investigation for wire fraud and criminal misrepresentation. It wasn't a full-blown indictment yet, but it was the first real pressure on my dad. And it showed, because 2 nights later, he showed up at my door, unannounced. I opened it, and there he was, stooped, slightly face-pale, hands shaking like he hadn't slept. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just taller now, figuratively. "Can I come in?" "No." He shifted on his feet. "You don't have to do this. We're family. You lied. You stole. You roped Jason and David into it and used my money for your damn toys. You could have just asked for help, Dad, but you had to make it a crisis so I wouldn't say no." His voice cracked. "I thought if I told you the truth, you'd say no. Then maybe you should have accepted that no instead of selling me a lie." I stepped back and closed the door in his face. He didn't knock again. 2 days later, he called my work, told them I was mentally unstable and harassing the family. HR called me in and asked if everything was okay. I showed them the legal documents, the filed reports. They apologized, but the damage was done. He was trying to ruin me. That night, I told Janet to go all in, file the civil claim, freeze any accounts we could trace to the fraud, put a lien on the boat. Megan looked at me like she didn't recognize me, and not in a bad way, in a "you're finally standing up for yourself" way. I was, because this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about every birthday I spent alone, every time I was told I was too sensitive, every lie I believed because I wanted to belong. They'd picked the wrong son to con, and now I was going to tear the whole rotten tree down branch by toxic branch. The court case went public in early spring. I hadn't told anyone outside of close friends, but small towns have big mouths, and once my dad got served with papers for wire fraud and the civil lawsuit, it hit the local paper like a grenade. Local man accused of faking medical emergency for money. Family feud turns legal. The title was too polite, too sanitized. It didn't say what really happened, that my father, my own flesh and blood, used his role in my life like a crowbar to pry open my trust and rip out every dollar he could get his hands on. I didn't expect the fallout to come so fast. David, my cousin and his partner in crime, bailed the moment the charges came down. He issued a public statement through his lawyer claiming he had no idea where the funds had come from, said my dad was the one who assured him everything was legit. He flipped on him instantly. Their business accounts were frozen by the county within a week. The boats were seized. The marina lease canceled. Jason's new SUV towed from his driveway one morning while he was getting his kid ready for daycare. My funds had paid for the down payment, and my attorney made sure the lien we filed traced directly to that transaction. He tried to call me, but I didn't answer. Just watched the voicemail notification blink like a dying signal on a bad connection. Then my dad started calling. Day and night. I didn't answer. The voicemails became increasingly desperate, then angry, then unhinged. You don't understand what you're doing. This is your family. You're ruining us. I'm your father. You owe me everything. You'll regret this. But I didn't regret a damn thing. I felt alive. It was like I'd been holding my breath since childhood, and now I was finally breathing with my own lungs, without guilt, without manipulation, without the twisted obligation that had wrapped around my neck like a leash my entire life. Then came the cherry on top. My dad's employer found out. I hadn't planned for that, but a friend of mine, one I hadn't even told about the lawsuit, saw the article and connected the dots. My dad worked in sales for a regional equipment company. Apparently, when his bosses saw his name in the paper, they weren't thrilled to learn their employee was under investigation for fraud, especially when some of his sales commissions had been questionable. He was fired within a week. Suddenly, the big man, the one who used to puff his chest and bark orders and make me feel like I was 6 years old every time I walked in a room, was jobless, under investigation, and hemorrhaging money in legal fees. The power shifted so fast, it was dizzying. Mom called next. This time I picked up. "Daniel," she said, voice trembling. "What do you want?" That was the first time she'd ever said it like that. Not what do you need, not what's wrong, but what do you want? Like a negotiator on the losing side. I told her, I want the truth. I want it in writing. I want him to admit he lied, admit he used me, admit he knew exactly what he was doing when he told me he needed that surgery. There was silence. Then I'll talk to him. 2 days later, I got an email, typed, signed, from my father. It was clinical, cold, barely 2 paragraphs. To whom it may concern, I, Robert Nolan, acknowledge that I misled my son Daniel Nolan into transferring funds under the false pretense of a medical emergency. These funds were instead used for personal and business purposes without his informed consent. It wasn't an apology, but it was an admission. And in court, it was everything. Janet submitted the letter as part of our final evidence package. The judge reviewed it. The county prosecutor closed the criminal case in exchange for restitution, but the civil case remained. We settled for the full $7,200 plus legal fees. My dad had to liquidate most of his savings to pay it back. He offered to give me payments. Janet laughed in his face and told him if he didn't pay in full, she'd reopen the fraud case. He paid. And just like that, he was done. Stripped of his job. His side hustle gone, reputation torched, money drained. He tried one last thing. He sent me a handwritten letter, the kind people think will redeem them. Said he was sorry if I felt hurt. Said he only did what he did because he thought I was financially stable. Said he didn't expect me to take it so personally. I burned it. I didn't need closure. I already had it. But what I did need, what I wanted, was to make sure no one else ever got pulled into his vortex again. So I sat down with Megan, cracked open a beer, and started drafting a public Reddit post. Every lie, every screenshot, every dollar, not for revenge, for record, so that anyone Googling his name, whether for business employment or trust, would see what I saw, the real man behind the mask. And maybe, just maybe, I'd stop being the only one who'd paid the price for his manipulation. I haven't spoken to my father in over 8 months. Not since the restitution was paid. Not since his name was dragged through the dirt of the very town he once walked through like a king. Not since I watched him lose everything, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because he earned every bit of it. The silence has been a gift. It's amazing what you can hear when the shouting stops. You start noticing your own thoughts again, your own instincts, your own worth. Megan and I finally put an offer down on a house, nothing fancy but ours. A fixer-upper, just enough space for a workshop and a backyard where we plan to plant lavender and tomatoes in the spring. The day we signed the papers, I found myself staring at my bank app where that $7,200 once sat and felt something close to peace. It took losing that money to finally take back my life. Jason hasn't reached out. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he blames me for everything, for ruining the family, for taking things too far. But I've learned that in toxic families, truth is always the villain. David. Last I heard, he skipped town. Someone told me he's trying to open a bait and tackle shop down in Alabama under a different LLC. Good luck with that. I'm not chasing him. Mom sent me a Christmas card, unsigned, no message inside. Just a photo of a pine cone centerpiece and a generic thinking of you print. I didn't open it until New Year's Day. By then, I had already made peace with what she chose, silence in the face of harm. Compliance masquerading as love. She never stood up for me, not once. And that card didn't change anything. But the real surprise came a few weeks later in early February. I was at the hardware store picking up some drywall anchors when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Amanda, my niece, Jason's daughter, 17, now maybe 18. I barely recognized her at first. Last I saw her, she was 10 and still calling me Uncle D. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said. "I hope this isn't weird. I saw your story online, the one you posted, and I wanted to say I'm sorry." I blinked. "Sorry for what?" "For how they treated you. My dad always said you were unstable, selfish, dramatic. But after I read what you wrote and saw the receipts and everything, I realized none of it was true. I didn't know what to say. So I nodded." She continued, "I want to go to college out of state, but they don't support it. I guess I just needed to see someone walk away and still be okay." That one sentence hit harder than anything else had all year. I offered to buy her lunch. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't promise her anything. Didn't offer to pay for college or fix her life. But I told her the truth, the full truth, and she listened, really listened. And as I watched her leave, head held a little higher than when she arrived, I realized something. I didn't just take my father down. I stopped the cycle. And maybe that's the most powerful revenge of all, not destruction, but interruption. Not punishment, but prevention. My dad still lives in town in a smaller house now. I hear he's working part-time at a hardware store, ironically not far from where I shop. We've never crossed paths, and I hope we never do. If he ever tries to contact me again, I won't rage. I won't retaliate. I'll just block him. Because I don't need apologies from men who only speak truth when they're cornered. I don't need redemption from people who defined love as leverage. What I need and finally have is freedom. And the next time someone cries to me over the phone for money, I'll ask questions. I'll demand receipts. And I'll remember the hard, expensive lesson I had to learn to get here. I'll never again confuse blood with loyalty. And I'll never again believe that love comes with conditions. I never went back. When Amanda left that house at 18, I welcomed her like I was saving my younger self. As for my dad, he's still there, trapped in the darkness he created. And me, I'm finally free.